Marshall in the middle.
Welcome back to another episode of the Nuclear Biological Chemical Room. We are here with Will Marshall, Nate Alganaga. Hey, these are the Avengers, man. We're back at it. You know, we're back to talk some more of the controversies that are happening this week. As we were just saying off camera, man, it's been a hell of a news cycle. Feel like we've been dropped in a laundromat. We're hitting spin cycles, dry cycles, all types of cycles, right?
Yes, sir.
So before we crack into some of this stuff, man, I wanted to try to elaborate a little bit on this because a lot of people may not know what kind of scientific basis a lot of this stuff is coming from. You know, when you hear on the news cycle, oh, enriched uranium and why they're a threat, a lot of people don't even get what we're talking about. And I see so many people saying like, well, how do you fucking know? Well, how do they know? You know, like, well, it's not hard once you kind of understand the science behind it. As Top, you know, I was your NBC guy. I was the first person to ever in Fort Leonard Wood score 100%. And to this day, I don't think my record has been broken, scoring 100% on the CBRN analysis in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. If anybody else has done it, let me know. You know what I mean? I was a lot more astute and sharp when I was in my 20s, but maybe, you know, I still got a little. But I can hear this man talk, Neil deGrasse Tyson. If you want to share my screen, he's a controversial figure politically nowadays. I don't agree with a lot of his politics nowadays, but I do agree with a lot of his science. I grew up watching the guy. This little segment, he has about 6 minutes. He's going to explain uranium enrichment for those that don't fully understand it. All right. And I want people to get a grasp of understanding how this process works and why we know that this is what they were doing. Okay. So let me go ahead and play this.
You might have heard something on the uranium enrichment program in Iran and the centrifuges. So let me just put some of that in context in case you were wondering what's going on. So uranium, one of the elements on the famed periodic table, it has 92 protons in it. And the number of protons in an element defines the element. Uranium is traditionally considered the heaviest natural element. We look around the universe, do we see anything heavier than that? No, not really. We, however, are not content with what nature gives us. We want more. So in particle accelerators, we bombard the nuclei of elements and we can make heavier elements than uranium. And we've done so. Last I checked, we're up to 118. That's 26 more elements than the universe gave us. So frankly, I think that's badass for humans with our primate brain, being able to come up with that kind of advance on something birthed in the universe. Anyhow, when you find uranium in nature, typically it's a uranium ore, it comes in completely mixed in 3 varieties. There's uranium 234, uranium 235, and uranium 238. Oh, by the way, these versions of uranium are called isotopes. Anytime you vary the number of neutrons in an atom, it's an isotope. They all have 92 protons, but all the rest of that number comes from neutrons. It's got way more than 92 neutrons. Oh my gosh. They're crammed into the nucleus. So many of these big elements are unstable for that reason. Okay, there's a lot going on in the nucleus, and the nucleus wants to spontaneously break apart into lighter elements. Neutrons, by the way, go wherever they want. If you were a proton, there's only so close you can get to the nucleus because the nucleus is positively charged and you're positively charged. You'll repel. So neutrons, since they are neutral, they are offered no resistance walking straight into the nucleus of atoms. So here is uranium 235, and it's hit by a neutron. What happens is the nucleus splits into 2 parts, 2 lighter atoms. If you measure the mass of those 2 lighter atoms, it is less than the mass of the original 235. Where did the mass go? Ask Albert. Hey, Einstein, where did the mass go? E equals mc squared. Energy is the mass times the speed of light squared, which is just a constant in that equation. So energy and mass are equivalent. And if you lose mass, you gain energy for having done so. Anything that's radioactive emits energy. So that's not what's interesting about uranium-235. If you split it, the splitting creates 2 or more new neutrons. If I have a collection of uranium-235 atoms and I split one of them with a neutron,
boom,
2 neutrons pop out the other side, they hit 2 other atoms. Now we're up to 4, then 8, then 16. This doubles fast. And you get what we named back at the birth of atomic energy, a chain reaction. And each one of those reactions releases energy. And given the kind of thinking that goes on in warfare, this wasn't simply a physics experiment that you write up in the journal. It was immediately weaponized to create a bomb. So it turns out uranium-234 doesn't behave. You can split it, but it doesn't shoot out extra neutrons on the other side. So you'll get the energy from splitting one of them, but you're not going to create a chain reaction. Same problem with uranium-238. It's only the 235 that has this property. If you get enough uranium in one place at the same time,
which is called enrichment,
you light the fuse. If you want to make a bomb, you want to isolate the uranium-235 from the uranium-234 and 238. Most of the uranium ore is uranium-238, not useful for you. About no more than 1% of the uranium that is mined is uranium-235. So you want to enrich that. You want just the uranium-235. Well, how are you going to do it? These atoms are mixed together completely. How are you going to pull out the one that's in between the other two? Use a centrifuge. Well, centrifuges don't work on solid matter. You have to turn the matter into a fluid. It's a homogeneous substance that takes the shape of its container. So liquid is fluid, so is gas. The study in physics of fluid dynamics is the study of objects moving through gas and liquid. The same formulas apply in both cases. Back to uranium. One way to do this is to turn it into a liquid, but it turns out it's easier to turn it into a gas. Once you gasify the uranium, you now centrifuge it. You spin it. The centrifugal forces will separate out the U-238 from the U-234, leaving the U-235 in between those two. So these centrifuges are complex bits of engineering to siphon out the uranium-235 in between the 234 and 238. Now, if you pull it out when it's enriched by 5%, that would mean what you've pulled out is 5% uranium-235. That's good enough for nuclear power plants. Sure. Want to make energy from fission? Go right ahead. Up the purity to 20% or more. That's enough to power sort of nuclear propulsion in, for example, nuclear submarines for the Navy. And the value of that is it can stay underwater for much longer periods of time before refueling. But to make a bomb, it has to be so purified that at least 90% of the uranium that's extracted is composed of uranium-235. So it all depends on your goal. We don't think of just living on Earth as a centrifuge, but in a way it is. On Earth, you live in a centrifuge of 1G. That's why your Italian salad dressing settles out.
All right, you get the point. So essentially, we have an issue where Iran was, if you share what I posted up right now, you'll see Iran was at 60% enrichment when you needed no more than 20 for anything they claimed to be doing during the Obama nuclear power accords. So they essentially tripled what they needed for anything that we agreed upon. Therefore, this caused the chain of reaction of us going on offense. This is where we're at now. And a lot of people seem to like wash over this fact. It's not that we're trying to be some extra tyrants or we're being controlled by Israel. As you can clearly see, when the peace treaty and the peace talk started on Friday, a part of the agreement was Israel should back off of Lebanon. What did Trump do? Snap his finger? Netanyahu, everybody stopped shooting at Lebanon. There was a ceasefire. Now, we have some issues with all of that coming up in today's episode today, where we now have to cover why all of this fell apart. And on top of that, after we get to the end of why this fell apart, we got some things to talk about as far as in our domestic issues where we have these gerrymandering, cheating libs everywhere. I mean, you know, people want to throw it back, but I got proof and I got receipts of how the right wasn't cheating on this and the left steady is. And we can get to it. But first, let's go ahead and get into this Iran thing. Hey, Nate, what's your key point on and takeaway on what happened this weekend, man? Overall, what do you feel has happened this weekend?
Exactly what happened today too. You talk about the Donald Trump snapping his fingers towards Israel to back off and do a ceasefire with Lebanon.
Right.
Turn around today, it just got extended this evening. Believe it or not, I don't know if your listeners or you guys are even aware of it, but it got extended three weeks recently here in the last few hours.
Right.
The ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon has been extended. The 60% was out there, and they had a lot of scientists on the news that were coming out saying the same thing that this gentleman was. You know, not in grave detail. Now I understand. I never knew what 238 and 234 and all that. I just learned a great deal. Only 235 can be accelerated into a nuclear weapon or atomic weapon. But yeah, the 60% was the big key.
Yeah.
And like you just showed, anything over 20 for a submarine or a
nuclear plant.
Exactly. Nuclear plant 5%, submarine nuclear powered submarine 20%. But anything over than that, now you're playing with fire.
Right.
You're absolutely on a goal and a path towards wanting to build a nuclear weapon.
Right.
And to this day, I still can't believe. Well, I can believe it, but the other half of our country just refuses to accept that, and they continuously go on national.
But they accepted it during the campaigns of Biden and Kamala. What they asked Biden, what are you going to do if Iran tries to create their nuclear weapon? What his warning was, don't. Same thing with Kamala. Yeah. Don't. That was their talking note. Don't. I mean, what is that?
Secretary Austin, don't. Well, they did. Okay.
Right.
Don't. My wife and I still laugh at that shit. Don't. Well, you know what, motherfuckers, they did.
Right.
And we didn't do a fucking thing about it, but give them back sanctioned money, 1.2 billion sanctioned money, so they can, so they can fund
further what they were doing.
Yeah, exactly. And further their nuclear ambition to get to that 90% uranium grade, 90% graded uranium for a nuclear weapon. Now the question is, here's what you got to ask yourself: who are the first people, or what is the first state or first nation that's going to be attacked if and when Iran was going to obtain that nuclear weapon? It's going to be Israel. Okay, they've been preaching it and vowing for it for 47 years.
From the river to the sea.
Exactly. Who's next? Well, neighboring people.
Saudi Arabia, Qatar.
Anybody that's really against the Shia people. You know, the original Persians are the Shia, which mostly all your countries over there are Sunni. But and then guess what? They can get a ballistic missile that would take it, to the shores of California. We're next. You know?
They already they can reach Europe as we stand. They've proven they can reach Europe, 2,500 miles.
2,500 miles.
They just need to put a warhead on it.
London.
They've proven it. What say you, Top?
Oh, I'm enjoying this. I I don't know. I'm enjoying watching the war end, you know,
Right.
and things go good. I am. Honestly, I haven't been listening to the news much. I haven't had a chance. I've been moving. I have
Right.
been moving,
Well,
and so I'm
well, I
just
can
kind of.
definitely catch you up right now.
Let's
Share
do
my
it.
screen, Top. Share my screen. Let me catch Top up real quick on some of the major events that happened this weekend. Okay, so Friday, April 17th, Iran declares Strait of Hormuz open to shipping, but Trump says U.S. blockade still active. All right, so this was April 17th, 9 a.m. We came to terms. We felt like everything was all good. We had good talks in Pakistan last week. We came to ideas of what we wanted and what we desired during the ceasefire. They also had us, our destroyers out there sweeping the minefields, which they're still doing, by the way. During this time, these are things that happened. Iran on Friday declared Strait of Hormuz is open to commercial ships during the ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, but confusion quickly emerged about whether the sea lane was really open without conditions. In line with the ceasefire in Lebanon, the passage for all commercial vessels through Strait of Hormuz is declared completely open for the remaining period of ceasefire, said Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Aragachi. This is the guy that constantly is on social media talking real big about we're ready for you to come. We got many people laying and waiting for you.
Yeah.
So he came out. He's the civilian diplomat. But less than 10 hours later, this is what happened. So this is the final message from Iran. I mean, India's tanker going through the strait.
Sepa Navy. This is Motorangastan Marhedar. You gave me clearance to go. My name second on your list. You gave me clearance to go. You are fighting now. Let me turn back.
That voice. 31 seconds of audio.
All right. So as we all have heard, Saturday morning, the IRGC went out and fired, and then they told the press that we have caused this because we still hold their ports at hostage, at bay. Now, a part of the ceasefire was that our blockade would stay in place, and they will open the strait, and we would no longer keep firing on their bridges and their power plants. We won't attack them. We'll hold off on that. Right. So the motivation behind holding off on that was trying to give diplomacy a chance. It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, what it looks like to me, you have a military complex and you have a civilian diplomatic complex that are not on the same page. The same people that went to Pakistan and argued and were negotiating are not the same people that are ordering the strikes. I think there's a lot of internal struggle. I think there's some miscommunication. I think there's a lot going on. But for them to turn around and fire on India with Indian waving flags, it kind of makes you, aren't these some, they're neutral players. India's not on our side. India's not on their side. They're just neutral players. And the foreign minister came open and said, everybody's free to go by. And no more than 10 hours later, here we go. And that was just the first of maybe 3 or 4 ships to get fired on and told to turn around until one made it to us. And we actually knocked them out the box and stopped them where they were at and seized it. And this was an Iranian vessel.
Yeah.
So
what you got, Nate?
The
problem is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They're actually calling the shots. The Ayatollah, who I believe is sending his diplomats to Pakistan and trying to make good, because they don't want to see their country destroyed.
Right.
The IRGC leadership, they're not having it. They're calling the shots, man.
Right.
So we're going to see where this is going. I don't think President Trump's going to launch any. I don't think he's going to launch anymore. I know last week I kind of geared that way, but this blockade is more effective than blowing up a bridge, man. In my opinion,
it is,
because we're starving them out, man.
I find myself in between a rock and a hard place. On on this topic. As you guys know, we've been documenting our reactions to this for about a week now. Well, about 3 weeks now. And you guys remember my stance immediately. Like, it was, yo, blow up their military, get the fuck out of there. There's no reason to keep playing with them. And I'm kind of the offense of the mind. Like, I can't help but think back to all the time. Every time I think of conflict, I think back to our OIF days. How I wish that we weren't dragging shit along. How I wish that we had more guardrails taken off of us personally, because we could have got the job done. One thing I believe about like people is that the heart of man can be very evil, man. You know, you got good and you got destruction. There is a dividing line. And I always say, look at people's actions to see what they've done and see how they do. My biggest sympathies go out to the Iranian people right now, because there are so many good-hearted Iranians. There are some good folk in that country, some good people in that country. And what I feel, geniuses. What I feel is Trump is in a situation that I would never want to be in. But there's one president that in our past, I believe, could really relate to his predicament. And I want to play a quick speech from him before he had to make one of the hardest decisions that any president in America has had to make. Yep. Harry Truman. Listen to what he said the night before his bombs.
There can be no peace in the world until the military power of Japan is destroyed, with the same completeness as was the power of the European dictators. To do that, we are now engaged in a process of deploying millions of our armed forces against Japan in a mass movement of troops and supplies and weapons over 14,000 miles, a military and naval feat unequaled in all history. Substantial portions of Japan's key industrial centers have been leveled to the ground in a series of record incendiary raids. What has already happened to Tokyo will happen to every Japanese city whose industries feed the Japanese war machine. If the Japanese insist on continuing resistance beyond the point of reason, their country will suffer the same destruction as Germany. Our blows will destroy their whole modern industrial plant and organization, which they have built up during the past century and which they are now devoting to a hopeless cause. We have no desire or intention to destroy or enslave the Japanese people, but only surrender can prevent the kind of ruin which they have seen come to Germany as a result of continued useless resistance.
So, you know, all I could think about when I see that is the amount of decisiveness, and this has to come to an end in his statement, is paramount to anything else. At the time, a lot of people might not realize this, but Japan had invaded China. They raped millions of people, women and children. They set fire to a lot of agitators or people that were against their regime. That's what he was talking about with the raising of Tokyo. It wasn't us. There was a lot of like turmoil and evil happening with the regime that was in charge. And they were so gutso that they didn't care. They would, Pearl Harbor, that took a lot of guts and nuts to come and just dive bomb and kill yourself. So when you're faced with an enemy that is that radical and they believe in their agenda so much where they're willing to just dive bomb and kill you, sometimes a loud message needs to ring true. And that at that time, Harry Truman had the idea to drop the atomic bomb. I think that we are a long way from needing that type of demonstration. I think we are way more technologically savvy and advanced where we could pinpoint and target things in a necessary way. But ultimately, I think that Trump needs to have that stilled moment. This ceasefire, the prolonged ceasefire, in my opinion, makes them look weak. It makes us look a little weak because, in my opinion, these individuals over here, they're bombing hotels. They're shooting their missiles into Qatar and Dubai and Saudi Arabia, neutral areas where they're killing civilians daily. They don't care. These people don't care. They're firing on people that's riding through the strait that has nothing to do with either side. They don't care about their neighbors. They don't care about anybody else. And sometimes the good guys seem to always get the bad rap because we're more powerful. They seem to think that we're just a bully because we can. And I'm here, and you guys are here. You guys know just as much as I know that we have always operated with a level of ethics that nobody else in the world is held to. Nobody else in the world is held to these ethics politically. But when it comes to us, we're the bad guys the minute we try to start taking out some bad guys. And I think, in my honest opinion, it's time for the IRGC to understand that they have no chance and they need to surrender. And the only way you can do that is really getting straight to the point. And sometimes it may take a little heartbreak on the side of the civilians. They need to rise up and fight their internal battle too. The attacks of bridges and power plants, I think, is one of the hardest decisions to even try to make as a president. And I do not long for the decision to have to do it, but I know for a fact if I was in that position and the intel that I know of right now, just given to me public, my decision at this moment, since we're this far deep in it, would not be ceasefire anymore. They're playing games. They think they have more leverage than they actually have, and I would aim to show them that they don't.
Yeah. Well,
Anybody else say?
Yeah, I agree with you real quick. I'll let Will in here in a sec. I agree with you completely. The problem is, though, is their division, like I just talked about, within their country, between the Ayatollahs, the mullahs, and the IRGC. The IRGC aren't allowing this peace, or they're the ones keep forcing this war down the world's throat. They want it to continue.
Right.
Okay. And at the same time, we're fighting Chris Murphy, Senator Chris Murphy, Hakeem Jeffries, Senator Schumer, right here in our own country, where now they have literally become spokespersons for the Ayatollahs. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was saying, I mean, are they leaders in the House of Representatives and the Senate, or are these individuals? They now become spokespersons for Iran, man. It's sick. So I mean, I wake up every morning and I'm like, Will, man, I'm just like, I'm getting to the point where I'm so sick of seeing. I think I'm more sick of seeing our own lawmakers in Washington fight against this just to see this man fail, our president.
Right.
And that's why I wake up and I'm like, man, maybe it's over. Maybe this is it. You know, either way, bomb the shit out of them, blow them out of existence. All their infrastructure's totaled, but do something, man. Let's just get on with it, because I think I'm getting more sick to my stomach watching lawmakers in our
situation, whether he likes it or not.
Yeah.
So you might as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Might
Either
as well.
way, man. We're there.
I'm proud of the ceasefire. I'm glad we're not bombing people. I'm glad that people are talking. I'm glad that Trump is in control of it. And so I'm go Trump, go ceasefire, go, go forward. Let's go forward toward less bombs.
Let me ask you this, Top. How many people do you think in the center left or middle of this country feel that way?
I think everybody. I think everybody would get if we could say for everybody in the country, vote bomb anybody or not bomb anybody. I think that over the time, everybody would choose, well, let's not bomb them. So I look at this and say, we're currently in a ceasefire. Let's enjoy it. Let's keep it going. Do anything we can do to keep it going and make sure that it keeps going. That's the way peace is done. You don't get peace through bombs. More bombs never brings peace. At some point, you got to stop it.
I just pointed out a perfect example of how bombs brought peace, and those same people that got bombed by us, Japan, are some of our closest allies, and they're a part of the world stage now.
We could have ended that war without bombing those people, in my opinion. We
I
could have.
believe that we would have had a prolonged war and lost more people on both sides. That's my counter argument to it.
I believe that too. But I think the American people, after 4 years, if you're going back to World War II, after 4 years, I think the American people were like, enough is enough.
Right.
I don't think the American people even considered the atrocity or the destruction, future destruction of what an atomic bomb can do to the planet. I don't think that came in people's minds until they started seeing the live coverage of the testing in the 50s. You know what I'm saying? But at that time, at that point, we couldn't wait for this to end. You know, so yeah, it goes. Yeah,
The wars are not fought by governments, so to speak. Wars are fought by companies that are making those items. It's all about money. And I really believe that I'm glad that Trump is in the position that he's in, because he is holding them in check from just bombing and bombing and bombing and bombing. I am proud of the fact, and I do believe that all of the world's problems can be solved without having to clap back and rebomb. If somebody bombs us, that it could be a possible way to turn the other cheek and not retaliate. It could be a way to go. And I think that being strong sometimes is taking a punch. Now, I'm not saying you become the world's lapdog, but maintaining a ceasefire by ignoring some minor things that happen along the way, like how the IRGC is not doing what the Ayatollahs might be saying. If we're able to, fix that through the ceasefire, that's what we're talking about, rather than, look, they went and friggin' shot something. Let's go friggin' annihilate the whole country. I'm just trying to say, I appreciate the chance to have peace.
I really love that. I really love that about you.
It depends on what your definition of ceasefire is too, because
right.
theoretically this week we took 3 military actions against Iranian vessels. One of them, we blew the shit out of their engine room, militarily. So on paper or whatever, it's considered a ceasefire, but we're still conducting military operations, man.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, right? That was done in a way where casualties were minimized. They shot the engine room with a gun to where it disabled the ship. It was part of their blockade. I mean, that is a I would think not necessarily an act of war. That is enforcing this blockade that we've done.
But they're using it. The IRGC is using it to say that the United States broke the ceasefire. And then, of course, every time they say something, Hakeem Jeffries and Murphy and all them, they go right along with it, and they tweet it. They do the same freaking thing.
And the funniest part about that, they broke the ceasefire before we did. They attacked that Indian ship 10 hours after the ceasefire was negotiated. I get where you're coming from. What I like about this conversation right now is showing the polarity of us, right? Like, I'm obviously the most radical. Top, you're like center mass, and I think Nate, you're over there in the right wing. You're kind of close to where I'm at, but you're not as radical. And I think that's something important. I think that's very interesting to highlight, because the reason why I say that is, I think there's something to be said about, personal experiences, livelihood, world views, stances, things that people have been through. From my perspective, right? Like, I look at Utah, and this is a perfect example. There's places in this country right now that I know just as well as I know that you should not be caught out in the middle of the night, right? Like, you would know, you would feel it on the back of your hairs. You know that anybody out around here in the middle of the night, they don't mean any good for you. And there's a level of that even here on our shores. I sometimes struggle with coming face to face with that reality. And plus, you know, me being in prison for a while, I spent a nice stint in prison where I was living amongst the worst and worst of us. You know what I mean? Like day to day, you know, there will be certain guys that'll come in there and, you know, they got jammed up on some blue collar shit. They're good boys. They're good guys, really. You know, they just got caught up on some, and the way that people would treat them and run over them and do shit to them, and you know, a couple of them die off of bullshit because they wouldn't stick up for themselves. You know, now their family is trying to sue the prison, but the prison ain't responsible for it. He's a criminal. You know what I'm saying? It's like a lot of look. So I've had a look into the hearts of men in a way that I you know, from my time, you know, down range to prison to the streets. You know, I know there's an underworld out here, and I know that there's a sadistic nature to not all humans, but a lot of humans. Yeah. And it feels good to live in that reality where you can kind of block that off and think that all of it can be fixed. Some people will look at you and be like, "Oh, you love me, huh? Oh, really? Okay. All right. Well, why don't you bring me over to your house?" You know, there's a level of evil out in this world that the only answer is disinfectant to me. You know, I really abhor people that murder and molest kids. I abhor people that, you know, robs and backstabs people that trust them. I abhor. There's, you know, I'm an Old Testament guy. I'm not a New Testament guy. You know, I'm the guy that in Deuteronomy, when God says, "Smite the Amalekites, every last one of them, to every man, woman, and child, and get rid of their fucking cattle so that evil won't be on the earth." Right? I'm like, roger that, sir. Roger that. So there's a level of radicalness in me that I know I don't see in Utah, and I don't actually necessarily see it in you, Nate, but it makes for a good panel. And I love the pushback, Top. I really do. I appreciate you. I love you for it. And I swear to God, I'll put my arms up next to you every day of the week. Every day of the week. You could put your hand on me and tell me to slow down real quick, and I'll be like, "All right, Top."
I've been doing that. I've been doing that for years, Ray. I've been holding you back for years, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're the bulldog. And that's part of the reason why I chose you for my team and fought for you to be on the team. Is you're one of my bulldogs, man. I'd always rather have a dog that I can tell to be quiet rather than one that won't even fight at all. You know.
Right. That's right. All right, on to that topic. As far as the left is playing both sides, well, not even both sides. How they're so oppositional to America. There was so many other clips. Did you guys see that clip I sent you about the folk in New York sitting there honoring the dead Ayatollah? And I wanted to get some clips on that. I didn't hone it in because some more stuff was pressing, but it's just amazing to me how these individuals are so locked in to the feedings of these anti-American individuals in our media. I want people to understand how important these midterm elections are, what's happening in our country. If you stand at any point for the Constitution as an originalist thinker, not as a progressive, it's a living, breathing document, it changes because we decided that women can be boys, or we decided that, you know, it's no such thing as an illegal human, or we decide, none of that shit. If you look at the document and you read it and interpret it for the definitions thereof, I think you guys need to pay attention to these midterms more than ever. There's a lot that is happening right up under your nose. There's a lot of shifting. They're trying to destroy the Electoral College. They're trying to get rid of democracy as we know it. And as you know, as our country was founded, we are a republic, not a democracy. But they're trying to turn it into a mass democracy right in front of our face, where majority rules everything. I don't care if you got a 1% majority. And that's not how the founders intended. This clip I want to share with you guys is from CNN, which shows that I don't have a bias to where I look for my information. I pull it from everywhere. All right. This is from CNN. And this basically covers the Virginia redrawing of congressional maps and what has happened. And Harry Denton, he's a guy on CNN that does a wonderful job with doing polling numbers. And I like to highlight him whenever I can. He's keeping the facts factual. The anchors may have their bias, the opinion pieces may have their bias, but numbers don't lie. And he gives it to you straight facts. So let's get it.
We have some breaking news tonight, as CNN can now project that Virginia voters have approved a Democratic plan to dramatically redraw the state's congressional map. 92% of the results are in, with just over 51% voting yes on the ballot measure. Now, if this map is enacted, it means Democrats could win 10 out of the state's 11 congressional districts, which would boost the party at large in the fight for control of Congress. Harry Denton is here to join us. And Harry, obviously, there were a lot of questions of how this would go tonight. Tell us what we're seeing in these numbers so far.
Yeah, I would just say, look, the yes side won. Yes, they're probably going to end up lower than the percentage that Kamala Harris won in terms of the margin. But you know what? A win is a win is a win. And this means a lot for Virginia. And I will just note, just look at this. They have basically going to gerrymander this state rotten. They are basically going to lock Republicans out of power in a state where Donald Trump got 46% of the vote back in 2024. House seats Republicans in Virginia are only going to really end up with 9%. That is quite the imbalance that's going on here, right? Of course, this is part of a larger national picture as well in terms of redistricting. And this, to me, is what is so interesting, right? Oh, we've had all this redistricting, right? It started in Texas. Then it was California. We've done Ohio.
No, it did not start in Texas. It started in Arizona and Michigan. Yeah. Texas was a rebuttal to those, which, as he laid out pre-Virginia, it still ended in net positive. So what does redistricting mean? Redistricting is taking account of the voters registered in your districts, allocating and drawing lines around those voters to represent them in certain districts by a certain party. Okay, so basically, this means that if this district is primarily Republican voters, well, it's going to likely be a Republican seat. So they let the congressional lines be represented by those people in that district. What the Virginia has just done was take the mass populations around DC area, the DMV, as the numbers of people and spread that number across the state, even into the rural parts of Virginia that has nothing to do with their crazy voting in DMV area, and said that they are now the larger voting block. So now we're drawing all districts to stretch out and cover these red areas.
We've done North Carolina, we've done Utah. But heading into tonight, pre-Virginia results, the net gain from this mid-decade redistricting was really 0 seats, neither side gaining. But now is where we are right now with the Virginia measure passing. Democrats jump out ahead. They are the ones leading in mid-decade redistricting, leading right now by 4 seats on the strength of that yes vote, however thin that margin actually is.
So, Harry, I mean, obviously, Senator Warren was just talking about 6 months from now, the midterm elections. What could this mean for the fight for who controls Congress here?
Yeah, I mean, if you know anything about the House of Representatives, and you're down in Washington, D.C., so you know a heck of a lot more than I do, I would just say this, the power right now, it's so tight, right? Every vote is so tight in the U.S. House of Representatives. So you just take a look here, and this gives you the math of why this vote was so important. If you talk about the margin of the GOP majority in the House post the 2024 election, it was 2 seats, 2 seats. That's how many seats they could lose on a vote before losing the majority. Now, all of a sudden, we're talking about Democrats gaining 1, 2, 3, 4 seats, 4 seats in Virginia. The simple math here is 4 is greater than 2. Without Democrats needing to pick up any more seats, this would eliminate the Republican majority and instill a Democratic majority because the margins are so tight. This vote in Virginia means so very much, and that's why all that money was spent on it. My goodness gracious.
Yeah, a ton of money. Harry, thank you for doing that math for us.
I know, it's very hard, very hard.
This is why we keep you around.
That's right.
Harry Denton, thank you for that.
Holy shit, I see her teeth. Dude, right? I have never seen that girl. And that's not the word I want to use. I have never seen her smile, man, in my fucking life. Ever. Even Trump said something to her about 2 months ago. Can I ask you a question? Because I've known you for about 10 years now. How come I've never seen you smile? Dude, she was salivating, man. Hey, let me break something down real quick, if I may. I'll tell you straight up. I took some notes on this yesterday morning because I thought I had a I had an idea you were going to cover down on this bullshit, man, because I'm telling you straight up. So you have commentators, political analysts that come on, even Fox News, Sean Hannity. I forget what the dude's name, but he's always on there, man. Well, I've been saying now for the last 4 years that we shouldn't be doing this redistricting and all this stuff. And the Republicans started it with Texas. The Republicans started it with Texas. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about Texas for our audience real quick, man. I had to look this up too, man. Approximately 100,000 people, voters, citizens, have moved from California to Texas annually.
And the outcomes of Christian ethics, even on secular.
Hello?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ray's screen came over.
Gotcha.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
You're good, man. 100,000 people have moved from California to Texas annually. Okay, this was beginning recorded since 2022. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's keep going here. And that's going on till today. That's you're talking 5 years. So 100,000, about 500,000 people, if not a little more now, based on census.gov. Annual migration from the state of New York to Texas is about 30,000 citizens a year since 2020. Okay, that's just so you're talking New York, California, moving to Texas. I haven't even gotten to Washington, or I didn't even look up Oregon. But the point is, the reason Donald Trump mentioned this and he even advised it to Abbott, Governor Abbott, a couple years ago, or when he first took office. The reason he mentioned it was because there's an overflow of individuals leaving these blue states going to Texas. That's all it was. This wasn't a gerrymandering, set in stone, put your calendar on it. Texas has had a big problem. And I'm not even bringing up the illegals that have invaded the state of Texas in the last, since Biden took over. But I'm just talking in general. The state of Texas has been hundreds of thousands of people, if not over 1 million. So they had every right to do a redistribution of, registration of voters in that state.
Right.
District.
Further to that point, this is so funny because, one of these days we'll probably do some Reddit conversations. On that same topic, I was wondering, what's in the psychology of these people moving from these places? And I started Googling Reddit conversations on liberals leaving to red areas because it always seems to be that way. It's not conservatives or Republicans leaving and moving to liberal states. It's always liberals or Republicans leaving liberal states. The Republicans leave liberal states because they're tired of the people and the politics. The liberals leave the liberal states because they're tired of the economic standards. That's just on average consensus of what I've seen in the comments.
Yep.
But what I see in the results of them coming to the conservative states, they can't stand the Southern hospitality. They say they're uncomfortable. They think it's racism everywhere. It's just you see it like in some of these Reddit posts. Yeah, I moved from California and I live in Texas and I can't stand seeing all these maggot flags everywhere. Or I moved from New York to Alabama and I can't stand that these people are voting Republican. I don't see how they don't understand how backwoods they are. I sit here and I make in my living room what they make all year working. Like they talk down on the people where they move to. And then they get there and they start changing the economics and the politics. And they don't put two and two together. It's like they don't understand that the policies that they voted for in New York, which now they're running everybody away because, it starts with the millionaires and the billionaires. But guess what happens when they leave? The regular middle class, they get stuck with the bill. So I can promise you 1,000,001 free things, but it's not free. It's being taxed. And, it's just 2%. Well, your 2%, you're talking about going from maybe 20% to 22%. Well, that's not necessarily 2%. That's actually 10%. That's actually a 10% raise. You're calling it 2%, but that's a 10% raise in interest or in taxes. These things matter when you're talking about millions of dollars and thousands of jobs. People leave that shit. So when they leave, they go and create industries in another place that is cheaper, less taxed, less regulated, And now you have different industries popping up in the red areas. These jackasses that voted for the shit in these blue areas move to the red areas to fill up these jobs. And then they start shitting on the culture there, destroying the culture there. And then they turn around and vote for the same shit they ran from. And this is why I know for a fact that this cannot stand. Progressivism is a mind virus. It sounds crazy, but this guy here, I want to share this, is right along the topic. Andrew Wilson, great debater. I mean, I have fallen in love with this guy for like the last year. He was on a trigonometry pod this time. He went over to Britain and did this pod with them. I want to pull this part up right here where it's a long interview. If you guys want to go and catch the full conversation, go and check it out. He identifies himself as a Christian nationalist. I have no problem with terms like that. A lot of people get a little iffy about terms of Christian nationalists, white nationalists, black nationalists. If you're a nationalist, you good with me. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? That means
you love your country.
Your nation first. You know what I mean?
So nation first, man.
You know, so this is what he had to say about the left-right dichotomy, and I think it was very, very intriguing.
Well, Andrew Wilson, welcome to Trigonometry.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Great to have you on. Tell us about you, your background, how you've come.
And so, because there's no ethical foundation, just like, hey, why don't you have me up on your little show here?
Okay. God damn.
Missing in percentage
That's
on
what I
the
was trying
left,
to find
but they do exist, right?
Why do they want it? Granularity. It's all about ethics. And
okay, here it goes. Sorry about that. Stick with me. It's
do you
live.
mean progressives or do you mean leftists?
Both.
Like,
all right, should be at the 2.
The content became popularized,
okay.
And here I am. Never thought in a million years I'd be an entertainer, and I never thought in a million years that I would be engaged in as many high-profile debates as I have been.
And why do you enjoy doing this? Because a lot of people think it's
I hate
a weird
leftists.
thing to do.
So, I mean, just like, if you want me to be blunt.
Why do you hate leftists?
Because they're psychopaths who are going to destroy everything that I care about through suicidal empathy.
Do you mean progressives or do you mean leftists?
Both.
Like the entire left?
I consider the delineation of the threshold minute.
Because?
Because when you really get into the granularity, it's all about ethics, and they don't have any. And so, because there's no ethical foundation, all you're talking about is degrees of psychopathy.
What about people who just want like a little bit more wealth redistribution, but generally they love America? I mean, those people, they are decreasing in percentage on the left, but they do exist, right?
Why do they want it?
Because they think they have a different vision to the right of human nature, and they think that a lot of things that happen to people in life are partly about luck and structures and stuff like that. So they think that, they think the right massively overestimates the consequences of agency. So the idea that sometimes, the caricature of the right would be, well, everyone gets what they deserve because it's a matter of your hard work and talent and application and whatever. And the left, the sensible left, I think, says, well, sure, but luck is a big part of it. There, by the grace of God, go we. Therefore, if someone is struggling, not everyone is struggling because they didn't put in effort. Sometimes shit happens. People get sick, accidents happen, whatever. So we should look after people a little bit more than the people who want the lowest taxes possible. That would be the Steelman argument, I think.
Okay. So that makes sense. So the idea here is social safety nets, right?
Right.
Okay. So how come those aren't voluntary?
Well, probably because you can't achieve the level of redistribution you want without applying some level of force.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because the entire idea of progressive liberalism is supposed to be voluntarism, and that the left-wing government does not force you or compel you to do anything.
No, but that's bullshit.
But that's the promise.
No, the point of government is to make people do shit they don't want to do.
Completely agree. But the promise of the leftists, the promise of the progressive, the reason they demand that we have a secular government and we can't move towards Christian ethics or Christian nationalism is because secularists are going to do what's fair. And what's fair is you can do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anybody else. We're not going to force you to do anything. The evil Christian nationalists will. But here you just laid out a case for how it is that they're compelling me against my will to do various things.
Well, right. I mean, any government is is about the thing that really defines a state is the legalized use of force. It's all about the
Totally
use of
agree.
force, right?
That's what the state is.
Yeah, of course. But see, I think if we want to have a discussion about progressives being idiots, like we're going to be on the same page with that one. But we were talking about distinction between the center left, I guess, and the progressives.
This is where he breaks it down.
And I was saying,
this is the deep part.
Isn't there quite a lot of reasonable people on the center left who would agree with us that the state is about shaping human behavior and making people do stuff, but what they want is well motivated and actually based on some rationale that we might agree or disagree, but is kind of logical, which is about a higher level of I don't believe in zero taxes and no government redistribution at all personally, right? So therefore it's just a matter of degrees. And it's about, is it 5% taxes or 20% taxes? But once you start getting into the high 80s, that's where I'm at. You know what I mean? Do you see what I'm getting at? So that's where I think sometimes in these arguments, the existence of the reasonable center right and the reasonable center left gets lost because we're constantly arguing with the extremes on the other side.
Well,
is that fair?
Yeah, I guess, but maybe we can dive into semantics a
Sure,
bit.
if you want.
Okay. So when you say right or left, you agree with me that's dialectical?
What do you mean by dialectical?
They're
opposites of each other, you mean?
Well, not just that, but when we view politics in the paradigm in the United States, we view it through a dialectic that is dual. It's left, it's right. So even you said center left, that's plays within a dialectic, right? Yes, there's a center, but it's still left or right.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
There is it gets more, I don't mean to be pedantic either, but this is where it gets more difficult because someone could actually be in the center, meaning they have some center right opinions and some center left opinions that don't neatly align with either party. And I think the existence of those people is probably quite underestimated, even in a country as polarized as this one, just from talking to people.
Maybe.
Yeah. But dialectic, I think I agree.
Yeah. So there's a dialectic. So when we say left, what's the referent? And when we say right, what's the referent? What are we referencing here?
Well, the position relative to the center.
Sure, maybe. But I mean, what is left and what is right politically? Is it social issues? Is it taxes? Is it a mixture of both?
Mixture of both.
Mixture of both. Okay. Right. So I think that we can break it down further into pillars. So I think that these are philosophical positions and people just don't realize it.
Right.
When you're arguing with a guy like Destiny, the reason he's very frustrating for you to debate with, the reason that he wanted to bog things down into things like the most ridiculous thing in the world, though it's unprecedented. Everything's unprecedented. That's unprecedented, right? The whole idea there, and you pointed this out rightly, is, well, I guess words don't mean anything, right? We just use unprecedented, I guess, when we mean new. When we get down to the core, the pillar that holds up the belief of Destiny, what is it? What is the pillars that hold up the left? What is the philosophical underpinnings?
I don't know in his case. I think in his case, actually the philosophical underpinning is people who don't agree with him are bad people and therefore they need to be destroyed by any means necessary. I think that's it. So it's about power, really.
Well, I think the idea, the philosophical underpinnings operate from the left-right dialectic. The left-wing pillar is based around anti-realism, anti-moralism. So that's why you end up with postmodernism and many of these other philosophies which come from left-wing liberalism. Those aren't coming from right-wingers. Those are coming from left-wingers. Right-wingers are the reason that they're so much more associated with things like traditionalism or things like religion, this kind of thing, is because they view society as being duty-bound, and progressives view everything through the prism of rights. So I have a right to do this. I have a right to do this. I have a right to do that. And the right is saying you have a duty to do this. You have a duty to do that. You have a duty. So this is where that dialectic really clashes. From Destiny's standpoint, there's no such thing as a moral fact. None. They don't exist. Everything is dependent upon stance. So if that's the case, you can't actually do anything immoral, which is why he does so many things which are immoral, right? Because from his perspective, it's just dependent on stance. The right is saying there's universality with morality. It's not just stance dependent. It's stance independent. The reason that they get so upset with the left is because they perceive them as doing things which are horrendously immoral. But from the left stance, they're like, well, but it's all stance dependent. So I can't be doing anything immoral. And that's why the underpinnings for the kind of like philosophical pillars, they don't align, and why we're constantly clashing. The right considers these people complete immoral degenerates. And from their view, they are. The left, on the other hand, sees that as being totalitarian and evil, and that they're there to control, destroy, oppress. Because from their view, what could they be doing immoral if everything which is moral is dependent on their own stance?
Right.
I think that was a wonderful breakdown, at least in the sense of how I look at the left-right dialectic. You know, you see people that are leftists, is everything shifting? Oh, he's a girl now. Oh, he's a boy. Oh, I'm gay. Oh, and it's just all over the fucking place. And whatever they feel is what this is my truth. This is my truth, not your truth. This is my truth. This is the stance that the left stands on. And it's true. I can look at you, Nate. I can look at you, Top. There's things that are concrete and foundational in your viewpoints. There are things that, you know, you can't really waver on. You know what I mean? And a lot of it has to do with your religion, your spirituality, your foundational upbringing, holding dear to certain traditions. And these things give you also the idea that you have a duty. I think all of us are on this panel right now to some degree because we think we got a duty to this country, not because this thing is some kind of moneymaker, right? Like nobody's getting paid here to say anything. You know, we're actually just sharing our opinions, and also all of us have a deep love for our country. That lies in the duty, right? And I think conservatives typically do align with exactly what he says. There's a lot of duty in our beliefs. We don't think that rights are just magically given to us. We think we have to earn those rights. Benjamin Franklin said you got a republic if you can keep it. The Constitution is nothing but a piece of paper to anybody that is not morally and spiritually grounded in faith. That's just what he said. And look where we are now, where people are rewriting the Constitution every day because they don't give a damn about faith. What you guys say? What you guys take on that, Nate? Will?
Depends what your definition of liberal is or left is, like he was saying. You have to go back in time. What timeline are you talking about left? What timeline are you talking about Democrat, moderate Democrat? Because they don't exist. What the reality was for those definitions 15 years ago, they don't exist anymore. You know, they just don't exist. So your left nowadays are, in my opinion, are your Marxist, socialist, basic government takeover of decision making down to the core level of every constitution or every episode that we go through in this country is now being weighed on whether the government, local or federal, could get involved and make that decision for you. That is my opinion of what left is today. If you want my opinion of what left was 25 years ago, close to more even 30 years ago with Bill Clinton, you're talking a different category. I write about this in one term. Bill Clinton ordered that if you were receiving government subsidies, that you had to work 20 hours a week, community service, cleaning people's houses. You had to earn that 20 hours a week. You had to get on a bus and you had to go to. Can you imagine if a Democrat lawmaker tried to do that or suggest that today? They would be ousted out of Capitol Hill, man. They'd be gone. That's my so that you have to, in order to define left and right, you have to go back in time and figure out what it is today compared to what it was, contrast to what it was 10 years ago. And it's way off nowadays, brother.
I think that's a good take. What about you, Top?
Well, I just found out that I have been inducted and part of, and I'm not sure that I'm supposed to actually talk about it in public, but I have now been enacted, and I'm a part of the committee called They. So if somebody says they, then now that's me. Okay. So if y'all got anything going on in your life you need, a little help with, and they might be able to help, then you just let me know, and I might be able to, but I am now officially a part of the committee called They.
But my take on it all, the left right dichotomy. As we know, 1919, 1909, the Communist Party of America was formed here in America. They were actually a political party with a political agenda during World War I here in America. They stopped putting candidates up and started funding one party. They were the leaders in advocating for public schooling. They wanted control of the kids from kindergarten to 12th grade. They wanted to set the standards for all higher learning. While we were at war fighting the ideology. I don't think the left wing, as we say it, is a real thing. I think it's something we imported to America. I don't think that it was something that was foundational to America. I think Democrats and Republicans, yeah, they had their stances, but all of them had the same rooting and foundation in the Constitution. They had disagreements, but they could politely come to terms and see common ground and understand that they're seeing the same thing. They might just have different solutions. As you point to Bill Clinton, by today's standards, he would not be anything what you would call a leftist, but he was still a liberal. But liberals and leftists aren't the same thing until modern time. A liberal is somebody who looks at the idea of freedom of religion, freedom of speech as some colossal pillar in their idea of what it means to be a free citizen and grant liberty granted by God, right? Those used to be the classical liberals' foundations, and they were all still rooted in duty. What did JFK say? Ask not what you could do, what your country could do of you, of what you could do for your country. He was a liberal. He was a Democrat. But as you say, their policies were still aching to what we as conservatives feel are all right. You know, the funny part about it is when you look out through time, there was a whole, everybody knows about the battle with McCarthyism in the 50s, right? All of these things that have happened have been little incremental steps that progressives have come and pushed. And it just so happened that the progressives, which were imported Marxist ideology, imported communist ideology from far left realities from Germany and France during the Bolshevik Revolution, the Bolshevik takeover, all of these ideologies that came to our shores are not from here. So when you look at modern day Jeffries and Schumer and all of these people, the AOCs, the Mamdamis, the Seattle mayor, the lady who's Mamdami just appointed as his housing public official that's running, all just it's numerous, the whole VA government, they're all Marxists. They're not liberals. They're not classical liberals. They're nothing America has even seen before. These are leftist activists. These are leftist radicals. They are 1,000% opposite of anything that is normal for the last 250 years of this country. So to look at them as left wing and right wing in the dichotomy of what there used to be is not really real. Left wing today, you have progressives, and then you have people that actually are what you would call me far right. I'm far right. I'm radical. But I'm the opposite answer to those far radical insurgents to this country. I am what's boiling up under the surface that is tired of the shit, that's been watching paranoid with my tinfoil hat. There's a lot of us out here. You know, there was a time me and Top talked and we was off camera on the phone, and I was letting him know, like, yo, I'm not a character. I really live. This is me. This is what I think. Am I going to go load up my gun and go shoot somebody? No. Am I trying to marshal some people up and go do something radical? No. What I am asking for is radical fervor at these voting booths. I'm asking for understanding your local politics. I'm asking people to understand what is happening right in front of your face. And the more you poo-poo it and don't think it's serious, one day you're going to wake up and realize that, you know, it's not no problem to get fired for not taking a COVID jab. But that's going to be extended to every facet of your life. You're going to have a social, a societal core credit score where if you're not behaving right online, your bank account will be shut. They did it in Canada last year to a bunch of truckers. And people think these things aren't reality. These are real things that we are voting in because we don't like Trump and we don't like what he said and we don't like Republicans. They're racist, fascists, just dumb shit and don't even know what fascists mean. It's a lot to our political scheme that is happening. And I'm so tired of the people, like you pointed out, that are sitting right in our congressional halls being 100% enemies to our people. Some of them aren't even born here, like Ilhan Omar. Some of them are like the other lady, Rashida Tlaib, talking about reparations for immigrants. They're sitting in congressional seats right now.
That was the goal, man. That was the goal. That was the goal.
For me, it may sound radical to a lot, but this is what I see happening. This is what I see coming. And there's no way to avoid it other than voting and getting involved in your local politics. Make sure it doesn't come to a neighborhood near you.
Yeah. And by the way, speaking of Capitol Hill, just a reminder to our viewers out there, tonight at midnight, 70 days, baby, 70 days without any funding to the Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah.
And we don't even talk about it anymore because our whole fucking country has forgotten all about it and nobody even talks about it.
Exactly.
I'll put Fox News on tonight or CNN. Hell, I'll play the game. I'll put CNN on. You won't hear a fucking word about Department of Homeland Security. Unbelievable, man.
Right. In the midst of wartime.
Yeah, there you go.
In the midst of wartime.
Thank you. Yeah.
Go ahead and end this off, Top. What you got?
Hey, I love you guys. We've been having a good time tonight talking about all kinds of fun stuff, I've had a blast with you guys. It's really, really cool becoming friends with you guys even closer,
Yeah.
When you hang out and you chat and you share information back and forth. I'll tell you, we should have been talking about aliens. That's what we should have been talking about this whole dang time. Not all these doggone Iran bull crap, man. So,
Top, you and I talked a little bit about it on Monday morning, man. The aliens.
There we did. All right, guys. This is the NBC Room, man. We're sponsored by Penny A. Cox, Esquire, attorney at law for all your lawyer needs. If you need the Popo, if the Popo's chasing you, call Penny A. Cox, Esquire. Thanks, everybody. We had a blast, man.
Yes,
we're out.
Marshall in the middle.